Whilst the polls might show Trump and Harris in a neck-and-neck race to the White House, the bigger concern is the widespread expectation that Donald Trump may not accept his defeat if he loses.
If we can keep that cheating down, because they're a bunch of cheats, if we can keep that cheating down, we're going to have a tremendous victory. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time.
Trump has spent considerable time rallying his supporters with the message that any loss would likely be the result of fraud. If I lose, he said, it's possible because they cheat. That's the only way we're going to lose, he said at a recent rally, setting up a narrative that discredits potential unfavorable outcomes and highlighting how abusing the First Amendment right to free speech can have damaging consequences on democracy. Trump has repeatedly declined to confirm that he will accept the results without question, unlike Kamala Harris, stating he will do so only and if the process is fair and legal.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, sure. It was my decision.
Since the January 6 Capitol riots, he has embraced many of those who protested the 2020 election outcome, even calling the day a day of love, underscoring his defiance of traditional democratic norms and promising to quash the sentences of insurrectionists, even those convicted of seditious conspiracy. His running mate, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, has also been vocal in questioning past election results. During the October vice presidential debate, Vance refused to acknowledge that Trump lost in 2020 and later stated that he still doesn't believe Trump lost 4 years ago. The Trump campaign's efforts to cast doubt on the election outcome are backed by a large-scale legal strategy supported by party leaders. The Republican National Committee, headed by Lara Trump, has already invested heavily in lawsuits designed to challenge voter rolls and alleged irregularities, even though many of these suits have been dismissed in court. The aim is to create an impression of systemic flaws in the voting process, regardless of the legal outcomes. Along with Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon's strategy of advising Trump to just say you won, even when he lost in 2020, it's likely that the results of Tuesday's presidential election won't be officially known for days or potentially weeks if the courts get involved. The Harris campaign, civil rights advocates and election officials are bracing for a potentially tumultuous post-election period, anticipating a wave of Trump-funded legal actions seeking to invalidate ballots and disrupt certification processes. However, legal experts remain confident that, as in 2020, any such attempts will be rejected by the courts. In the previous election, judges dismissed 61 lawsuits challenging the results, and experts expect a similar outcome this time. Election officials across the country have spent the last 4 years preparing to handle any disruptions, enhancing their readiness to protect the electoral process. Experts predict that if Trump does lose, his challenges will begin on election night, especially as delays in counting close votes could fuel claims of irregularities. Trump has hinted that he may declare the vote rigged if results don't swing in his favor, echoing his stance from 2020, where he called it for himself before the vote was counted counted. The RNC is already laying the groundwork for these claims, with lawsuits alleging inflated voter rolls, often based on misleading data or debunked evidence. The Supreme Court just ruled that Virginia will be able to continue to purge people from the state's voter rolls. The Republican state has argued it is part of an effort to remove non-citizens from rolls, but several U.S. citizens were also removed from the rolls at the same time. And we've seen other states take aggressive action right before the election, publicizing that they're taking non-citizens off the rolls, but in reality, these efforts have also ensnared U.S. citizens. In Alabama, where at least 2,000 U.S. citizens were swept up in an effort that was supposedly targeting non-citizens on the Alabama voter rolls. And election experts are suggesting that this false narrative that large numbers of non-citizens could vote will be used to lay the groundwork to sow doubt about the election and potentially be used for future election challenges. The Trump campaign's legal maneuvers may extend beyond just the initial vote count. Some local officials, many aligned with Trump, have shown reluctance to certify elections, a responsibility that they are legally required to fulfill. In key battleground states, these officials could delay certification, prompting lawsuits to enforce the final results. If local challenges fail, Trump could still attempt to dispute the electoral outcome at the congressional certification of the electoral vote on January 6, 2025. However, changes to the Electoral Count Act now restrict such attempts, clarifying that only state governors can certify legitimate electors and limiting the role of Congress in election certification. Trump's focus has shifted from allegations of pandemic-related voting irregularities to claims of non-citizen voting, despite numerous studies showing that this is exceptionally rare. Nonetheless, Trump and his allies continue to spread these claims, often bolstered by figures such as Elon Musk, who has amplified the narrative to millions of followers since buying Twitter for $44 billion. Even with widespread doubt that Trump's challenges will succeed, experts warn of the lasting impact on American democracy. The erosion of faith in elections could harm the foundation of U.S. democratic institutions, as trust in the electoral process is crucial to maintaining a healthy democracy. House Speaker Mike Johnson appeared to confirm Donald Trump's claim on Sunday that Republicans have a secret plan to win the election. By definition, a secret is not to be shared, and I don't intend to share this one, House Speaker Mike Johnson said in a statement. Many believe that Trump and his allies, including figures like Johnson, are discussing plans to bypass the Electoral College by using a contingent election, where the House of Representatives, rather than the Electoral College, would choose the president. The 12th Amendment of the Constitution dictates that if no candidate wins a majority in the Electoral College, the House of Representatives elects the president. In this scenario, each state delegation in the House would cast one vote, rather than every individual representative. Since Republicans currently control 26 of the 50 state delegations, this process could allow them to install Trump as president if the election were to go to the House. While a contingent election could be one path for Trump to rig the election, some suggest that the Trump strategy might not actually rely on reaching that point at all. Instead, they say the goal may be to manipulate the Electoral College by preventing states that Trump loses from certifying their results, thereby lowering the overall number of electors. This approach stems from a specific interpretation of the 12th Amendment, which says that the president is the candidate with the majority of the whole number of electors appointed. Typically, this whole number totals 538 electors, but in this interpretation, if some electors aren't appointed by their states, Trump could theoretically win with a majority of those who are still counted, potentially requiring fewer than the usual 270 votes. To execute this plan, Trump's team would likely need Republican-led states to delay certifying their election results beyond the statutory deadline of December 11th. If certification is delayed long enough, those states' electors wouldn't be counted, effectively reducing the total number of votes in the Electoral College. In 2020, Trump's team unsuccessfully attempted to overturn the election by submitting alternate slates of electors from states that he lost. For this plan, however, they wouldn't need to submit fake electors, they would just need Republican-led states to stall certification. If the deadline passes without these states appointing electors, the whole number of electors appointed could be reduced and Trump could potentially secure a majority among those remaining.
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged.
Currently, 27 out of 50 states have Republican-controlled legislatures, including key states like Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Meanwhile, 26 states have Republican governors, who could also play a role in delaying certification. With the right combination of stalled certifications, Trump's team could create a situation in which the remaining electors allow him to win with fewer votes. This approach is largely untested, and experts are already preparing to counter it, but it represents a new potential tactic for contesting election results in the United States. And this is where Speaker Johnson becomes critical to the whole secret plan. If electors are not submitted by December 11, he'll likely declare the process over and say that the electors appointed by that date are the only ones allowed to vote for president. Now, to prevent this scenario, it hinges on Republican officials acting in good faith and certifying election results even when they don't favor their candidate. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that such good faith remains widespread, particularly in key battleground states or among influential figures in the Supreme Court. This strategy might clarify why Trump, Johnson, Elon Musk, and a number of other prominent Republicans have been making high-profile appearances across the country, amplifying concerns around election integrity. By repeatedly questioning the legitimacy of elections, they may be priming certain officials to be more willing to delay or deny certification of results, especially in critical states. The push for a narrative of distrust also sets up a foundation for justifying actions that would undermine or outright ignore state election outcomes. Their influence in spreading doubt plays directly into the approach of delaying certification, essentially creating a justification for obstructing the process if Trump's desired results don't emerge. This approach not only mobilizes supporters who believe the claims are fraud, but also potentially pressures state and local officials to act in line with Trump's strategy, under the guise of defending fair elections, which he is actually rigging. On Friday, the Supreme Court declined an emergency appeal from Republicans that could have led to the disqualification of thousands of provisional ballots in Pennsylvania, a critical battleground state in the upcoming election. The decision upholds a state Supreme Court ruling requiring election officials to count provisional ballots cast by voters whose mail-in ballots were rejected due to minor issues. This ruling is seen as a significant win for voting rights advocates who have pushed for counties, particularly those under Republican control, to permit voters to submit provisional ballots on Election Day if they discovered their mail-in ballot faced rejection for common errors. The ruling comes as Pennsylvania voters face critical deadlines. Today, Friday, voters in a suburban Philadelphia county had their final chance to request a mail-in ballot, while a county on the opposite side of the state provided voters another opportunity to receive a ballot if they'd not received one by mail. And then there's the more rudimentary plan for setting fire to ballot drop boxes. Officials in southwestern Washington were able to recover nearly 500 damaged ballots from a ballot box that was deliberately set on fire on Monday. In Vancouver, Washington, an unknown number of ballots were destroyed after incendiary devices were placed inside a ballot drop box. Additionally, 3 ballots were damaged in a similar fire at a drop box in Portland, Oregon. Authorities have linked these incidents, along with one other, as part of an organized effort. Despite the damage, officials believe they will be able to retrieve necessary information from the ballots. The FBI, along with state and local law enforcement, has launched an investigation into the attacks. This is what it's come to. Trump and his henchmen are so desperate to win this unwinnable election that they are resorting to arson. Look, nobody in their right mind will be voting for the guy who tried to overturn the results of the last election, who reversed a woman's right to choose, and who, despite being a self-confessed stable genius, denies knowing anyone in his orbit who derails his own messaging, even at his own rallies.
I don't know anything about the comedian. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. I heard he made a statement, but it was just a statement that he made. He's a comedian. What can I tell you? I know nothing about him. I don't know why he's there. You put comedians up, and I guess he went on earlier in the show. I don't know who he is.
Trump is a liar and a cheat. He cheats at golf. Of course he's going to cheat at this election. He cheats on his wives. Of course he's going to cheat at this election. He cheats contractors. Of course he's going to cheat in this election.
If we can keep that cheating down, because they're a bunch of cheats, if we can keep that cheating down, we're going to have a tremendous victory. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time. So we're going to have an exciting time.
Donald Trump needs to lose in a landslide win for Vice President Kamala Harris. And he will lose, but only if you vote like your country depends on it. Democrats are the very definition of democracy. They must win in order to preserve it. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.